Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
good evening, everybody. We will start with item D tonight, approval of minutes. In the absence of any objections or corrections to the minutes from the March 21st, 2022 meeting, the minutes shall stand approved. Hearing none, they will stand approved. Item E, citizen communication. If there's anyone in the audience or online tonight that has anything that they would like to address council on that is not on the agenda, feel free to let us know and we will be sure to get that addressed. Hearing none. All right, item F, reports from council committees. Item F1, Finance and Budget Committee met on March 28th, 2022, and recommend council to approve the first quarter budget adjustments as presented. Item F2, the Safety and Human Resources Committee met on March 28th, 2022. Councilman Bear?
At that time, we recommended council approve the purchase of a new system for in-car cameras and in-car computers off the state contract utilizing ARPA funds.
Thank you, sir. Item F3, the Technology and Communications Committee did not meet earlier due to lack of agenda items. Item H, introduction of new ordinances and resolution. Item 1, ordinance number 012-22, an ordinance authorizing ODOT to work within the city limits for repainting the Route 6 overpass on Glenwood Avenue and declaring an emergency. Can we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
You can second. I'll second. Whatever.
Thank you. Joel?
Thank you. Okay, so the ordinance for ODOT to work within the city limits, that's something that they need whenever they do work in the city limits. They would like the local jurisdiction to approve of that. Also, I made a reference to them starting in September, but they need the legislation by September, so we don't actually have a schedule yet for when they're gonna start on this, but they would like the legislation by September, which is why it's here now, so we've got that ahead of time. Chad, do you know if they have a schedule for this yet, or?
I was told they're going to let the project out for bids on November 17th. So I would assume that means the work will be in the spring.
Okay. Just to clear that up, and I think there was one question also on the garbage, and I can't remember if I got back to everybody on that.
You got cleaned out. Looks a lot better than it did.
So, yeah, the street sweeper usually picks a lot of that up, and we've been slow on getting the street sweeper out. It has been out a little bit more, but there's the staffing level issues.
So when they paint the bridge, they're gonna put the big tarp down and paint the half of it and then tarp the other half? Is that they're
They
gonna do that?
didn't outline the process for us, but I believe that's how they usually do it. They'll shut a lane of traffic, just to protect
Okay,
passenger cars.
right, okay.
And that's it.
Good, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, Rox, please call the roll.
Lori? Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes?
Ken?
Yes.
McDade?
Yep.
Molly?
Yes.
Item H2, resolution number 013-22, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of sodium chloride in cooperation with ODOT and declaring an emergency, and suspension is requested here.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Joel?
Thank you. So this is the annual salt contract that we have with ODOT, requesting suspension because they give us 1 month to respond. And it's just not enough time for us to be able to do 3 reads, so, unless we call special council meetings, so, hence the requesting for suspension.
Motion for suspension.
Second.
All right, Rox, please call the roll on suspension.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
That passes on first read. Item H3, resolution number 014-22, a resolution adopting the Regional Income Tax Agency rules and regulations for administration of the Income Tax Code of the City of Napoleon, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. Motion.
So moved. Second.
Council
Yep.
President, I'll take this. Back in 2016, on House Bill 5, all municipalities had to adopt a tax ordinance, and as well as the city of Napoleon did. This is part of the move to RETA, and we need to adapt their rules and regulations, which mirrors the Ohio tax ordinance as well as the city of Napoleon's. This is part of the timeline of our July 1st deadline, and I would just ask for suspension of the rules for the passage of this.
Do we have a motion for suspension?
Motion.
Second.
Perfect. Rox, please call the roll on suspension.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
That also passes on first read. All right, item H4, ordinance number 015-22, an ordinance establishing a fund to be titled One Ohio Subdivision Settlement Allocation Fund as required pursuant to the July 21st, 2021 National Opioid Settlement Agreement and the One Ohio Subdivision Settlement, and declaring an emergency. Do you have a motion?
A motion. Second.
Thank you.
Council President, I'll take this one again. This is just the establishing of the, what's called the One Ohio Fund. There was an auditor state bulletin that came out that suggested and told everyone that we should be establishing this fund. This is part of that opioid settlement that we are a part of. So once we receive the funds, we'll be putting the money into that funds and then spending it out of those funds. Unless somebody else knows, I have no idea how much money we're going to receive or the time frame of that money at this point. But this just preps us and we'll be ready whenever it arrives.
What do those funds have to be used for?
From what I've read on it, it needs to be used on like a lot of drug prevention. And there's some leeway with that, but there certainly are gonna be guidelines with it.
Question in line with that. Is there any chance that that money could be used to help pay for the radios and the police cars? Since it would help with the booking and all of that, updating that?
That's certainly something I can look into. My gut says no, but I'll definitely check on that. I'm guessing that it's gonna need to be more in line with treatment, prevention, enforcement, for drugs, so.
However lax they are sometimes with the
Sometimes there's some,
guidance,
sometimes
you would
there's
think
some
that the-
leeway. They don't always give you very specific rules. They just tell you you did it wrong afterwards, so. I'm definitely gonna check on that, but I don't have a solid answer for you right now.
Councilman Hayes, if it's like the ARPA funds, what they'll probably do is they'll come out with a final rule after the money's been issued out. And for some clarification, in some of the readings that I've done, and I can't say for certain, I would say maybe some of our DARE program costs could be, because that would be drug related. But at this point, there's not, there's been some guidance out there, but nothing that I've researched that we could use specifically. Again, all we're asking for at this time is just the establishment of the fund.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
All right, that will move on to second read. Item H5, ordinance number 016-22, an ordinance supplementing the annual appropriation measure, supplement number 1, for the year 2022, and declaring an emergency. Do we have a motion?
A motion?
Second.
Thank you. Kevin?
Okay. President Balaruki picked a good day to skip, didn't he? This is the quarterly budget of adjustments. These are one of three that I'm gonna ask for the approval today, and I asked for suspension of rules of all three, just so that we could close the book on the month of March to have these done. These first ones here are appropriation budgets where basically we've increased certain line items for various reasons, as it's spelled out here in your, in the packet. I could go over these specifically, or if you have any questions, we could do it one-on-one. Just on a brief, the reasons were all listed there, because sometimes it's a matter that costs came in higher than what we anticipated during the budget process. I will say down in Fund 220, we had nice increases because there was donations that we didn't anticipate. Then even something down in Fund 221 was, we did not budget for certain fees and costs during the budgeting process, and I'll take full responsibility for that, that it was just something that we budgeted zero, and then when we had these costs, we have to increase to make sure that it's paid. There's nothing out of line here that I could say or needed to point out unless people have specific questions. I will say the biggie though is a Fund 503, the 800,000. And Joel, if you want to explain that
Yeah, I was
one.
gonna go over 500 and 503. So I'll start with the 503 though, since that's the one you brought up. This is for the improvements to the industrial substation we had talked about over the last couple of years. This 800,000 would be to move the behind the meter generation line that runs from the two gas generators in the solar field to the industrial substation. Move that line to, I guess, the back end of the substation where it would feed to a Southside substation. And the reason for the $800,000 now and not the full amount is that line has to move first before the rebuild of the substation takes place. And we are working with AMP Transmission right now to get that substation rebuilt, but there are some expenses on the distribution side that was talked about. And where we left off in September of last year was that, those options, we laid out about 7 options. And the options were option 4 and option 7. And just recently, the committee had reviewed both of those options and decided that option 7 was the way to go to line ourselves up for a future transaction with AMP Transmission, if that's something that council would want to approve at a later date. But where we left off was we didn't appropriate any funds for this work because we were still kind of putting the plan together. So we do have engineering going through. Right now, we'll have RFQs go out in conjunction with AMP Transmission to design both the substation and the work that needs to be done on the distribution end. So that portion we did budget for, but this portion we did not, which is why it needs to be appropriated at this time. The other item is the 500 fund would be for the purchase of new transformers. This is due to new businesses coming to the system, which would be Dana specifically. And that's because they have, there'll be a little bit larger load. We're anticipating maybe a 3, maybe 4 megawatt load consistently from them. And those require 2 1500 kVA transformers, which are becoming increasingly expensive. So we did get money from them as a, as a pass-through cost, so they did have to pay for materials, but on the back end, we've got to make sure that we have the size transformer sitting in the yard in case any of the other ones fail, then we have a replacement. So it's typical standard practice to keep materials and supplies on hand. The lead time is pretty long, but Greg, do you have anything to add to that, or can you describe the schedule of when we should take possession of one?
We're supposed to get the new cans in June, the 2 replacements. But other than that, you pretty much get it all right there.
Okay. Price of transformers have gone up, just like everything else, but not, I shouldn't say that. Hasn't gone up like everything else, it's gone up more than everything else. Transformers have basically doubled in price, if not, or more than double in price at this point. Which is a little alarming, but it is a necessity, and we do have a pretty hefty transformer budget now, but with the addition of these 2 transformers that we're buying as replacements, and all the other transformers that we have to buy and replace throughout the year, we do need to supplement this account.
Do we currently have any on hand? Do we
Uh,
currently have
of
any
that- of that-
size on
of-
hand?
Of the 1500s?
Yeah,
We do, but they're all spoken for. ADS is redoing a project right now. We have to set one there while the one is still in service,
okay.
and then we'll remove that one, and it'll be back in our inventory. And that'll give us 2 in inventory,
Okay.
but we've got,
So we have enough to potentially meet emergency needs if required? Right, knock on wood, we don't need them, but,
when we
right,
get these ones in June, we actually have 2 in the lot right now.
okay,
But those 2 of them will go out there, and one will go out to ADS, and we'll have 2 in the lot.
okay,
But we have several other customers that have 1500 kVA cans,
right,
so we'll have 2 for backup.
okay.
There is a request for suspension on this. If there is no other discussion or questions, I will take a motion for suspension.
Move suspension.
Thank you.
Second.
Rox, please call the roll on suspension.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Dr. Dave.
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
And please call the roll for the ordinance.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Dr. Dave.
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
All right, that passes on first read. Moving on to item H6, ordinance number 017-22. An ordinance authorizing the finance director to make appropriation transfers, transfer of appropriation 1 from one appropriation line item to another appropriation line item pursuant to ORC section 5705.40 for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022, as listed in Exhibit A, and declaring an emergency. Do we have a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
Thank you. Kevin?
So this is ordinance number 203. Again, so we could just close out the month of March, we do ask for suspension of the rules. And as I can also remind that all these things were discussed in the Finance and Budget Committee last Monday. So this next part here is where we will take stuff that are budgeted from one line item and move to the other instead of just increasing. And we do this for various reasons because it makes a lot more fiscal sense instead of just raising your budget. If it's not needed, just to take it from a line item that maybe don't need as much funds at the time. A couple of these are called undefined contingencies, like the top one and the bottom one, where we've taken money from there to the other line item within that fund. And we do budget certain amounts for undefined contingencies, and basically that is a catch-all line item that if we need it, we can move that to whatever line item is requesting of that. And so, for example, the top one there, we had removal of asbestos from the PD office at the time of budgeting. We didn't anticipate that. And down at the bottom, we have the repair of a water treatment plant, the UV reactor. That was not anticipated when we budgeted either. These should all balance when they're done, and if you look, there it's $5,100. That was transferred from one line item to the next. Any other questions, let me know.
Any discussion or questions? Hearing none. Do we have a motion for suspension?
A motion for suspension?
Second.
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
And please call the roll for the ordinance.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
That passes on first read. Moving on to item H7, resolution number 018-22, a resolution authorizing the finance director to transfer certain fund balances, transfer number 1, from respective funds to other funds pursuant to ORC section 5705.14 on an as-needed basis in fiscal year 2022, listed in Exhibit A, and declaring an emergency. Do we have a motion?
A motion?
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Kevin?
Again, this is 3 of 3. I asked for suspension again so we can close out the month of March. This last one here is just the transferring of funds from one fund to another, and there's only 2 of them this time. The first one there is we took from the general fund carryover balance and moved it to our Central Rotary Garage Fund. That was a decision that I made, that the Rotary Garage Fund is sort of an in and out fund that other entities pay into that. The issue that we were having there is that it was be too tight of an in and out, and we needed some of that flexibility, like a carryover balance. So we moved $15,000 in there to help free up the process with that. The last one is from the electric fund, from the 500 to the 503 fund, and that has to do with how the sale of JV5 RECs are being treated with AMP currently. And we anticipate that it will continue with that. This is actually 2 amounts that we totaled together. What they used to do is that they would send us a check of a certain amount, and this is 2 amounts. One's over 300,000, the other's around 120,000, 130,000. So the combined total is 538,000. What they've changed to do is that when we get our AMP bill, they give us a credit for that amount. So typically, our AMP bill is around $1 million to $1.1 million, and then we received one that was like for $600,000. Which is fine, except what this causes is fluctuations in our rates, because we take the average of the 3, and there's various other factors. So to try to level that out, we put that credit back in. Once the billing process is all taken care of, then we move the money from the electric fund to the 503 fund with that. Joe, you want to add anything to that?
Nope. You got it.
Thank you.
And again, I'm asking for suspension of rules.
Motion for suspension.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll on suspension.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
All right. That passes on first read. Item H8, ordinance number 019-22, an ordinance amending a certain section of chapter 194 of the Code of Codified Ordinances of the City of Napoleon, Ohio, specifically section 194.081A, credit for tax paid, City of Napoleon, regarding municipal income tax, also amending ordinance numbers 053-15 and 053-20, and declaring an emergency. Do we have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Kevin?
Okay. My last one of the night, I promise. So this is just basically, I'll call it a little bit of a cleanup. And this is what, when we moved to Rita, they looked over what our current tax code is. And first of all, the way it's written right now, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that it could have been challenged, or it may be challenged in the future. They see many tax ordinances dealing with different municipalities, and they've said that the way this is currently worded, it has been challenged before in other municipalities. So by changing the verbiage of that Part A, this sort of just cleans it up. Currently, the tax code reads, it says if a resident of Napoleon is subject to and paid municipal income tax to the operation of a business or recipient, so on and so forth, such taxpayers shall be allowed a 70% credit. So this is the 70% credit that was changed for this year. And then it says, but such tax credit should not exceed the amount Napoleon taxes levied. The way the language is, it should work is that if somebody paid a city 2.5%, but the Napoleon tax is due at a credit of 1.5%, we should only take that credit of 1.5. It has been challenged that they take that 70% of the 2.5 and actually end up not owing the city of Napoleon anything. And this cleans that up. The verbiage that you're gonna approve in the ordinance, the key word is that it says, I think if you go down, right there in the blue, let me double check on that. The key verbiage is by the lower of the tax rate, keep going down, it was the top line, by the lower of the tax rate in such other municipality. By changing that verbiage there, that takes out of that questioning. Now, we have not had anyone question that specifically, but the argument could be made. And then, again, it just cleans it up and it takes that question away with that. I have an example here that basically, if somebody has $100,000 of income in a 2.5% city, it's $2,500 they paid withholding. If they took the credit of the $2,500 at 70%, that'd be $1,750. But they would only owe the city of Napoleon $1,500, so they would not pay anything to us with that. So again, that verbiage just changes this question.
So then the new way, the correct way, then is, it's still paying Napoleon 1.5, right?
Yes, yeah, because how it works is that if they pay more, we still only take the credit of the 1.5% at 70%. So they still owe us more, the rest of it goes to that remaining city.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, and suspension is requested on this as well, Kevin.
Yes, please.
Do you have a motion for suspension?
I'll motion for suspension.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Tucker Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
And Rox, please call the roll for the ordinance.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Tucker Dave, Molly.
Yes.
All right, that passes on first read. All right, moving on to item I, second reads of ordinances and resolutions. Item I-1, resolution number 010-22, a resolution authorizing contracts with the townships of Napoleon, Harrison, Freedom, and the Village of Florida, and the Henry County South Joint Ambulance District for fire service and/or emergency medical service commencing April 1st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Joel?
Thank you, Council President Pro Tem. So we're not recommending changing anything, but we did meet with the township representatives and district representatives to try to get a better understanding of what the questions they had, try to get a better explanation to them. But I think for 2023, one of the things that we'll look at is, how those contracts are constructed and maybe look at how to, it was something that was put together a long time ago, with Kevin and his knowledge of how the property tax system works. I think there's room for improvement from our end. So we'll take a look at that and see what happens for 2023. But for 2022 contracts, the recommendations proceed as is.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Dr. Dave.
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
That will move on to third read. Item I2, ordinance number 011-22, an ordinance amending chapter 955 of the codified code of ordinances to the city of Napoleon, Ohio, to add section 955.09T regarding golf simulator fees. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Joel?
Thank you. We do have Tony here for questions as well. So we have gotten some feedback on this ordinance and just taking things into consideration. We do have a recommendation to make an amendment to the ordinance, and that would be to remove the rules and regulations from the legislation and to make the rental rates a per hour rental, not a per person rental. Person renting out, the way it reads now is it reads per person to rent. So if one person rents for an hour, they pay the rate. If four people rent for an hour and want to play around together, they all pay that same rate. So for it to be fair, just make it the recommendation is to make it just an hourly rental. And removal of the rules and regulations, that's allows, it allows staff to administratively make changes to the rules and modify things as needed, as this is a new process and allows for us to be flexible in how we operate this facility. So, and not only that, but I think in there, the hours, it states the hours. Let me just scroll back up to the, and I think it gives dates too. So if there's ever a bad weather week in late October or say early April, we could keep the simulator open a little while longer if the course is flooded or really bad conditions, so. It creates that option. So requesting a modification to include removing the rules and regulations and making the rates per hour, not per person.
Joel, are we removing all 6 of those listed under section T?
Yes.
Okay. And to scroll down just a touch, to compare the cost of what it would have been previously for, say, a group of 3 to what it would be after the modifications. Instead of paying per person, how much would that have been?
Can you answer that?
Well,
After
it depends on
three.
how many people you have in the group. I mean, it's significant. When we did the research on what types of rates we wanted to put in place, there were some facilities, establishments that had to pay per person, and there were some that were by the hour. So it was probably, I would say there was probably more that did per person, but there were others that were by the hour. But listening to some
feedback that I received, you could certainly understand it would be more fair if you charged by the hour. That way, if you had, say 4 people that wanted to try to get as many pulls as they can in 1 hour, it'd be paying quite a bit. It takes a little bit longer. So it's very understandable. Again, it's new, a completely new operation for us, so I think as people thought about it, myself included, they thought, what if we did it this way? And well, let's get it right.
Yep.
We're doing it far enough ahead of time that we can get it tweaked. And by removing the rules, there may be some things that we hadn't thought of, when we set it up, that we can make some changes, maybe raise the age group as far as having to be with an adult. That may need to be changed. So just lots of things like that after more consideration from lots of folks. That's what led to this recommendation.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
How much is 1 hour gonna cost after 3 PM on a weekday?
I just realized your TVs are off out there.
28 hours.
So those numbers are actually still correct.
Correct. So the
We're not
28 hours
changing
would be-
those.
So if you went to play and it was just you, it'd be $28 to rent for that half hour. If you went in with 4 people, you make it pay yourself, or you could.
I understand, but
split it.
the question is, we're making a change without seeing what the changes are. I understand eliminating the rules, but is that what we're changing? We're not changing, we're taking away rental time and just cost? It's not cost per person anymore?
So
Is that correct?
the amendment that we're asking for is instead of it being a per person cost.
Right.
It would be a per hour cost, whether it's 1 person or 10 people.
So the weekday before 3 PM, 1 hour rate on here previously was $22 per person. If you have a group of 3, instead of paying $66 for your group of 3 for 1 hour, you're instead paying $22.
22 for the whole, which is fine. I just want to make sure we all understand what we're talking about. What we talked about was eliminating the cost per person. I wasn't sure if we're going to adjust the cost up because you might now have 2 people in a half hour. That was my question. Are those costs
those
accurate?
would be
That's
the
my
same.
question.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yep.
I like that. I think it saves the citizens a lot of money, and whether we have 4 people taking the simulator up for an hour, or if we have 1 person taking it up for an hour,
Still
we're,
going for now.
yeah, it's still out of operation for an hour for anyone else, so.
Well, we need to have a maximum amount of time that can.
2
because
hours. It's
You
in-
could
it's in the
probably
rules.
afford to monopolize it all day if you wanted to.
Yeah,
My
but they're still gonna have
suggestion would
rules
still
for
be
it.
for 2
They're
hours.
sending legislation.
And I would likely keep that in,
Right.
on rules and regulations. Some have suggested 3 hours, I believe 2 hours. In most places that you go to, that is, their maximum amount of time, just so you can get more people.
Right.
Since we only have 1 and they're at this current time, we want to make sure we have enough time slots for folks that want to play.
If we're gonna put 3 hours, then we need to put a treadmill beside it, they have to walk up to their ball every time. They have to simulate walking to their ball. They get in the treadmill and walk half a mile to get to their ball, that's what we gotta do. There won't be anybody there for 3 hours then. There's no golf cart and electric one either, on the simulator, you gotta walk this.
Tony, has there been any discussion about just renting out the facility during the down months when it's not typically open?
Just running the facility in general. Haven't heard anybody ask that. Certainly something that could be considered, I suppose.
I think that'd be a great idea. Mr. Hayes, are you the chair of Parks and Rec?
Yeah.
Could I refer that your way?
You can.
I appreciate that. Something to discuss at least.
Yep. Would it be okay to refer that to the board, Parks and Rec Board first? Is that what you'd prefer, Mr.
I would think so.
Chair? Okay. Perfect. So I think we have a meeting at the end of the month with you. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the ordinance?
So we'll need a move to amend first, of course, and then the rules state that if if it's on third read and we move to amend, then it goes back to second, but we're simply on second at this point, so it would come back amended on third read.
I do have a question about the cost of the system. When we were looking at the per person, I would think we were looking at, that we were gonna be recouping more income at that time. If we go by the hour, going straight by an hour at that rate, is it going to cover the cost of the system?
Well, I think the system eventually will get paid for. Obviously, we have the luxury of having half of the cost, actually more than half of the cost donated. So certainly if we kept it at per person, that we would be able
Well,
to pay that.
that's what I mean, is there's a big difference between doing the per person versus the per hour. And, you know, is it gonna be something where there's gonna be a lot of demand for it because it's gonna be less expensive than other areas that have that are going the per person rate?
It could, just again, something new, we just don't know.
Right.
There could be a lot of demand for it, there may be, demand for it in the beginning. Some folks, after the golf season, they're done with golfing, and they don't really hit the pitch until maybe, a month ago, or as the temperatures start to get warmer, so it's just one of those things that we'll find out.
But with suspending the rules, would that give you the capability of making this cost per hour flexible? Or is this the cost that would be stated?
Oh, this is stated cost, yeah.
Stated
This will
cost?
be-
Should we relook at
This
that
is
cost?
legislated. So, and the city council, you can definitely relook at any of the fees that are, levied for any services. But this would be one of them that, we would seek. for
I'll
any
be
change.
honest, I don't know enough about it, but you're talking a very wide difference between, 3 people at $18 versus $18 for that half hour. I really don't know what to
I mean,
say.
you're looking at staff time too. I mean, it's really all you're covering is staff time. The building is already heated and cooled through the winter. We do have, also concessions that can be sold as a revenue stream. But at the same time, I mean, if we're just covering our costs, our part-timer or whoever it is that's running the facility for those hours is less than whatever, even the lowest number, $18 on a weekday, before 3 PM is more than enough that covers that person's hourly.
Yeah, but you do have wear and
wage.
tear on the equipment.
Mhm.
You got other things. I don't know. You see my concern.
I do. With one simulator, I would say we're at least at a minimum breaking even. If not, still recouping a little bit of revenue for Parks and Rec Fund.
I think we had a comment from, ma'am.
Would there be a maximum?
Excuse me, ma'am, can you come up, please?
Had to come up.
Come up, state your name and your address for us, so we know for the record, please.
My name's Lori Snyder, address is Napoleon,
Can you be a little more specific than Napoleon, please?
just Napoleon.
We
My
gotta have
question
real-
to you is,
Wait,
would
I'm sorry, we really need a street address.
Napoleon, my question
It's-
to you.
No, we really need, I'm not trying to be rude, I'm just trying to tell you, we really need a street address.
Can you write it
I
down?
live in Napoleon, so I did.
You can write it down, if you wanna write it down on the sign-in sheet, that's fine too.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Dr. Cordes, I think you make a good point about the prices.
I don't know where they belong. I just want to make sure that, there are going to be things wear and tear, there's going to be maintenance cost, and not that I want to charge any more to citizens than need be, but at the same time, it has to at least cover its own cost. And I just wonder what that factor is. I just don't have a good idea because this is totally out of my realm of experience.
Since this is the first year,
Well-
nobody has any experience.
Well, being a first year,
And that's
yes,
how we
but
do.
even utilizing this equipment, I know nothing about it. I know nothing about repair, what it takes to this. And I just think that ought to be factored in.
I think that's probably the discussion of the board and the committee, right, ahead of time? There's some sort of logic behind it, I'm sure.
There's gonna be something, I don't know, a projector or something that's gonna need
But I think
bulbs
I think it's
hours on a
important
bulb or something. I don't know, there'll be something there.
to be accessible too, cost-wise, you know.
Right.
Most likely, you'll have one person or two people going in, so I don't think that people are gonna be paying $2 an hour, a bunch of people in there, do you? And we can look at it later if we need to.
Yeah, I think that's where I am. It's the first year. I think with prices being low too, it's gonna drive demand for it. So if that demand can offset some of the cost it would take, you know, just for one party.
Right, I mean, there's a possibility can have a draw and actually increase, you know, create a demand for future use.
Correct me, Tony, if I'm wrong, but this is, we really not going to be using the simulator until the fall at this point, correct?
Oh, okay.
So if we do these amendments, or whatever the proper word is, it was an amendment, was that it? If we do the amendment, and then next winter, we see that we're not bringing in the amount of money you or the Parks Board would like, can we bring this back at this time next year?
Sounds like a great idea.
That would be what I would suggest.
Okay. If there's no other discussion or questions, I will take a motion to amend the legislation.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Rox, please call the roll.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Secretary?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
And Billy, we need to vote on the actual ordinance itself as well.
That's correct.
All right, Rox, please call the roll.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Secretary?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
All right, that will move on to third read. Item J, third reading of ordinances and resolutions. We have none tonight. Item K, good of the city. Item K1, discussion or action, review recommendations on CRA agreements from the Housing Council and Tax Incentive Review Committee. Joel.
Thank you. The TIRC met and recommended approval of continuation, I should say, of all of the 7 CRA agreements that we have in place. And the Housing Council met today at 6:45 and approved of the same thing. So requesting approval from City Council to, for continuation of the 7 CRAs that we have.
Were there any questions or comments from anyone on the CRAs? Hearing none, we'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Secretary?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Item K2, discussion or action, purchase of new in-car cameras and in-car computers off state contract for the police department utilizing ARPA funds. Joel.
Thank you. The Safety and Human Resources Committee met, as stated earlier, and made a recommendation to approve of the purchase of this equipment off state term contract. I will point out that just as part of the discussion from the Safety and Human Resources Committee meeting, we do have $110,000 budgeted. That was budgeted because we were anticipating if we had gotten a body camera grant, that money would be then used and already budgeted for the purchase of those cameras, and then we would be reimbursed through the grant. We were not awarded that grant. We are anticipating future body camera grants coming up. We're at least hopeful for it. If that does happen, then we'll apply for that. But at this time, we do still have $110,000 budgeted. The need here is that the in-car cameras that we had purchased some years back are having troubles. They're failing to upload timely. They're having troubles with actually recording and, some other glitches with them, so we've been having a lot of struggles with getting them to work properly. They are a few years older too. And as for the in-car computers, are at their end of their useful life. They are starting to see their wear and tear, and they are due for replacements as well. So the request here is to upfit all of the vehicles, not just the 4 frontline vehicles that we have, but upfit all of them with in-car cameras and new in-car computers. So that's the $80,000 just for the hardware and software. There is an additional installation cost that would come in separately from this, but since this is over $25,000, it does require city council's approval, and it is off of a state term contract. So,
Questions?
did I do okay, Mr. Chair of the Safety and Human Resources Committee?
Yep, you basically summarized it, sure.
Okay.
Unless the chief of police has other things he wants to add.
I think it was covered, unless there's questions.
Any questions from council? Do we have a motion to enter into the contract?
So move.
Second.
Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
Okay. Item K3, discussion or action to approve specifications and plans and go out to bid for Haley Avenue SSO removal project. Joel?
Actually, if you don't mind, I'll turn it over to Chad.
Excuse me, yes, this is one of our long-term control plan projects. The city currently has 2 sanitary sewer overflows, which the EPA requires to be eliminated. This would take one of those SSOs, which currently dumps into the river when we have very, very large storm events, and it redirects it into the wet well for the west lift station. So essentially, instead of dumping into the river, it would dump into a pump station and stay in the sewer system. It's required to be finished by the end of the year, so got the plans finished, I'd like to get out for bid, just asking for approval.
Thank you, Chad. All right.
Question.
Yeah.
Since this is going out to bid, is it 50,000 gonna be anywhere close?
I believe it will be, my estimate honestly was around 43. We had 50 in the budget, so I put 50 for the estimate. We do have contractors working nearby, so I'm hoping we won't see large mobilization costs if one of them would be a little bitter. But we gotta try.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Second?
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
All right. Item K4, discussion or action, grant application for the former Central School property. Joel?
Thank you. So, for the Central School property, the Cultural Center of Henry County, there was an opportunity that came up late last year. This would have been in December. Grant program that the state of Ohio had put out, Department of Development, and that is a brownfield remediation program. And what they have is, and this is part of the funding that this comes from is from the Clean Ohio Fund program, if anybody's familiar with that. What they did was they rolled out a grant program at the end of the year to remediate brownfields, and they put together a set aside. So this is going to get a little murky here as I try to go through this, so feel free to jump in and ask questions at any time. But essentially what they did was they set aside $1 million for each county in Ohio. And then they have a total of $350 million in funds. So the set aside does not require any matching funds. But anything in addition to that set aside for each county would require a 25% match. Right now, there are 2 projects that are in the queue in the county, one in Hamler and one in Village of Florida. This would be a third project, so we're anticipating there to be somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000 in set-aside money right now that's available. So if this application goes in, we would ask for the remaining set-aside money, and then anything in addition to that would require a 25% match. So that's the sort of the general guidelines of the grant program as they are. As for the actual project, this would be for the demolition of the everything on the entire property. The grant amount we would seek would be somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000. That's our estimate right now. The original quote to demolish the entire property was around $550,000. That was 5 years ago. It was also, did not take into consideration prevailing wage. And since this is state funding, it would require prevailing wage be followed. Like I said before, the match amount would be 25%. So if it were if it were a $500,000 came from the set aside, that wouldn't require a match. Somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000. So the additional $200,000 to $300,000 would require a 25% match. That would be in the range of $50,000 to $75,000. So that would be the match requirement. And right now, it does require an updated Phase 1 environmental site assessment. That's actually currently underway right now. So, but, you know, overall, there is a high likelihood, being that this is still has some of the set-aside money that would be used for this for each county. The application is due April 30th, so we are doing some of the legwork right now to get the application in. But because of the set-aside money, and if there is a little bit of overage, there's still a high likelihood that this grant gets awarded. So we're anticipating that. We do have a representative from the Cultural Center of Henry County here. We do have a consent to access agreement that was signed by the CCHC, allowing us access and agreeing to, if the grant is awarded, agreeing to turn the property over to the city, and the city manage the project, manage the demolition project of the entire entire site. So that includes light poles, fencing, buildings, everything that's on the property, and including the asphalt parking lot. So that would be the request here, is that council approve of submitting the grant application with the anticipation that if it's awarded, the city would acquire the property and manage the project. So that's the basic gist. I don't know if anybody has any questions related to this, or if Mr. Tandris, you wanted to say anything?
Sure. So
If you do, can you come up to the mic and state your name and your address?
Jeffrey Tonjes, 8 Park Lane Drive in Napoleon. So first of all, you know, it is sad, we're at our end of our agreement with the school. It would be a great addition to Napoleon, but when this grant came out, we wanted to make sure we protected our angel donor. She has agreed that $500,000 will still go back into the community. So hopefully we'll get some type of performing arts center or cultural center with that. So hopefully this grant is good for the city of Napoleon, CCHC, our donors, and the community. So thank you for the time and help. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Does anyone have anything to add? Questions?
If I could add, what is our estimated match at?
The
25%.
estimated match for this would be at $50,000 to $75,000.
Is there any way to cap that? with
There
an
is, yeah, there is. So after, let's say the grant is awarded, and I've stated this before in an email chain that we had with everybody. And whatever the grant match is for what's submitted, and that's something that city council would have to be okay with as well. But to be on board with coming up with that match amount. And that match could come in a lot of different forms. There is a sewer interceptor that runs through the property. It is older. A lot of that could be used as, matching money could be infrastructure costs as well. So that's something to consider when looking at this application. And what I stated in our group email was that, city council would have to approve the match amount, but in our, down the road, if this is awarded and everything comes to fruition, the purchase agreement would have to have safeguards in place where there would be ownership or responsibility from all parties if there is any overage of whatever the match amount is, so that if inflation or there's unforeseen items like asbestos, trapped in some kind of utility vault in the building that was overlooked because somehow it got, closed in, that would have to be removed by statute, then, those overages would have to be, shared in some way by all parties concerned. So we would want some kind of safeguards in place.
I mean, that's, excuse me, that's what I would really caution. In the last 3 months, every project that we've done is coming over budget, right? So to have this, as protecting the city of Napoleon, we should have something to protect us that we cap that. Now, if we're obtaining the property, however that's written out, we understand where we got a vested interest. We also have 2 other parties that are involved that can't just walk away with nothing. I mean, the city of Napoleon School District used that money for else, they got rid of it for $1. My opinion, they would have some responsibilities with this. Also, the Civic Center itself, with their angel donor, could have some responsibility of this. That money is, the way I understand it, is sitting in escrow per the agreement, everything that I've read and been told, that it's sort of like an insurance payment. Sometimes you gotta pay. And while we're willing to pay caps of $75,000, if it goes to $100,000, somebody should also be responsible to bear that additional $25,000. And I'm coming from a standpoint of protecting the citizens of the city of Napoleon, because the taxpayers, they've already been taxed on this through the levy to have this built. And then, again, there's 2 parties that, other than the city of Napoleon, that's involved in this process. And that's sort of the standpoint where I'm coming from. You guys make whatever decision you want, but I would be concerned about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Mr. Mayor?
You say that the deadline for this grant application is April. Any idea, time frame as when we might be informed if we receive the grant?
Yeah, great question. So the way this application process has gone, there's already been 1 round. 1 round was already, we've gone through a cycle. And this is very unusual for the state to speed through grant rounds like this. So we're on round 2, and it's, came out in December, and round 2 applications are due April 30th. So they are slamming these through. And this is a common theme with ARPA money or the IIJA funds, the infrastructure federal funds. A lot of these grants are just kind of coming out, and, we're just trying to keep up. So I would anticipate that they've already awarded or announced awards for round 1. I would anticipate that the award of this would come around June. And I say that because supposedly there's a round 3 that's due sometime in June. And it's only for communities that use all of their, or counties that use all of their set-aside money. are eligible to apply. So,
So relatively soon,
yeah,
okay.
that's guesswork on my part, though.
Okay.
So, but the way round one went, if it follows the same pattern, the anticipation is June.
Is there a cost to apply?
We are working with a consultant, and they're familiar with Clean Ohio funds. They're doing this on their own, at no cost to the city, and the reason is, they want to be familiar with the project. So if there is a request for qualifications or request for proposals, they have more familiarity with the project, and theoretically, they could score higher. Not guaranteeing that they'll get any contract from the city at all. But that's a strategy that a lot of consultants use, is to, put their best foot forward and
Experience.
put them in position to maybe get awarded a contract.
At this stage in the application process, the state isn't requiring legislation, anything like that, right?
That's correct, yep.
Joel, going back to Kevin's point, I think that's an excellent point. At this point in time, how do we incorporate those safeguards for the city? Can we still write the grant application while still negotiating with the CCHC and the angel donor?
Yes.
Okay. And school.
And I've made that statement already, so I think, everybody's at least aware of that, so, I don't think that's not something that people are gonna balk at. Nobody wants the project cost to go any higher than what we're anticipating. Not the city, not anybody, so that's why hence the reason why there's always unforeseen circumstances. And I know this property's been looked at already a number of times, but in the event that there is something, then at least we have that in place. So that would be something I would suggest to have in the purchase agreement or something like that. So again, if this is awarded, the anticipation would be, sometime maybe in the summer, hopefully, we'll request for, hopefully successfully negotiate a contract with parties concerned, and then move forward with, some type of purchase agreement and acquire the land, manage the project, sign a grant agreement with the agencies, and, there's a lot of paperwork shuffling that happens, so this is the first step, so.
Anyone else have anything to add, questions? Okay. Do we have a motion to submit the grant application?
A motion.
Second.
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
Item K5, discussion or action, grant application for potential solar project. Joel?
Okay, this is another one of those grants that are falling out of the sky and this is actually a pilot program. So this is brand new. This is from the USDA Rural Energy Pilot Program. It's a grant opportunity that they had put together. It's actually pretty involved for what it is, but essentially, this program was put together. This was in your packet, so I'm just kind of going to go over it briefly, if that's okay. The program was put together. It's for the bullet pointed items here, community energy planning, capacity building, technical assistance, community efficiency and weatherization projects, and installation and equipping of community scale renewable energy technologies and systems. So, and as I kind of stated in here, over the past several months, we're exploring opportunities to try to advance a community solar project. I've been approached by some of the electric users to, put a project together, some of our larger users, and this would be one that would allow us, community solar would allow us to, allows for users to subscribe to the energy production of that facility. And I'll tell you that I have been in contact with the ODOT District 2 Deputy Director Patrick McCulley about potentially utilizing land in the medians where at the interchanges on 24. Since ODOT really doesn't maintain them anymore, they don't mow them, they don't have any contracts to do any of that work anymore. They just let them go. But what they do allow is for communities to maintain them themselves. And such as, one example, if you're familiar, City of Perrysburg has a big Welcome to Perrysburg sign in one of their clover leaves of their interchanges. And a lot of communities are like, well, why is Perrysburg allowed to do that? Well, they pay for it and they maintain it at their cost. In this scenario, we put together this real brief. I'll just scroll down real quick to the map. Here we go. Zoom out a little. Bear with me. And again, this is just conceptual, but what you see on the screen is just what it would look like if solar panels were put into these spaces that aren't utilized right now. This would be where my cursor is Woodlawn, and then Westmoreland comes in right where the cursor is here, where that ends into Woodlawn. You've got an inverter island, potential battery storage area. That's something we don't have now, but something that could be added in this project or later. But this is just the concept. And the basic premise is try to use land space that's not being used now, put it to good use. You know, we're doing this exploration as a request to the, you know, some of our customers. And essentially, you know, put this land to its maximum potential. We're looking at probably, it says 13 acres, but my guess is that it's gonna be somewhere between the 10 and 12 acre range, so maybe like a 2 megawatt type of solar array. Again, it would be a community solar project that would be subscribed by the users. I don't know if anybody has any questions so far, but essentially, going back up to the explanation here, I do have a letter of support from ODOT to allow us to use that space for this purpose. But I'll tell you, this application process is pretty rigorous up front, in that they want a letter of intent that's a 15-page, so, which is really unusual, but in my opinion, in dealing with grants for about 15 years directly now, I think what they're doing is they're just trying to gauge interest in, you know, for lack of a better word, they're weeding out the weak. And seeing that we kind of have a basic premise of a project now, I think this is a good time to at least, you know, go for it. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so this is one of them, but there is a cost. There is a consultant that specializes in renewable energy development, and they gave an estimate of $5,000 to write the 15-page letter of intent. That's just something that we just don't have the bandwidth in-house right now to put something like that together. So I would suggest this, obviously being an electric project, come out of the electric fund from the electric department, and the letter of intent is due April 19th. That's not the application. The application itself would be due sometime in June also.
July 18th.
July, there it is, July. So this would only be for the letter of intent. And actually, they don't even have an application template or guidelines yet for the application that's due in July yet either. So this is just for the letter of intent. They're really pushing out these grant opportunities pretty fast, and And if it's something that we don't want to explore, that's fine too. That's, no big deal, just wanted to put it out there, and we do have a project we could submit, and this would be the cost, and there we go.
You said that would be about 10 to 15 acres. How many acres do we currently have of solar power with our solar field?
With the solar field, I would say about 17 or 18 acres,
Okay.
roughly, of actual panels.
Right.
Of,
Well, I know because of the road being in the way and stuff, it's a little bit cut up, so it's not gonna be as efficient. How is the, efficient use, it's not gonna, you know what I'm saying, there's some wasted space there.
yeah.
And with the mowing, mowing that is gonna be a lot tougher to mow. With solar panels, there's a lot more maintenance mowing than there is just mowing an empty. I like the idea of the solar too, I'm just pointing out there will be more costs with it too.
Yeah, there are. So that would be hence the request for grant funding. If this were a flat, square piece of property,
Oh, exactly, then
It would be
it would
great.
simplify it, but.
but
yeah.
we've got to bore underneath of these, you can't put overhead in. You have to bore
Mhm.
underneath of the ramps. You have to bore underneath 24, and bore underneath all of these roads. And then you've got to build about 1,000 feet of line from the inverters to Glenwood.
Right.
So that's your,
But it is,
That's your-
but it is utilizing wasted space. so.
yeah, and I wouldn't even count the line going to Glenwood. I think that's a basic cost. It's not a lot, plus it's something you'd have to do regardless. So I think that the boring work and connecting the islands here is what the request would be for that. Whatever the delta is between building on a square, flat piece of land and then this cut-up piece of land, the minimum would be to try to apply for a grant that would cover that cost. So that's the basic premise of it.
So there's no cost to letter of intent?
There's a,
5,000.
yeah,
No, the 5,000 is for the grant, right? The grant, right?
no. The 5,000 is for a PO to write the letter of intent. The grant we can apply for up to $2 million. That's a maximum,
But there's a 20% match.
20% match.
Do any other communities have them that close to the road, solar panels like that?
Yes. The only one I can think of right now is as you drive up 23 through Ann Arbor on the north end of where it bends around, if you know what I'm talking about, by where 14, I think it's
Yep.
M14.
Wonder if we'd have increased dust coverage. We're not gonna get quite as much sunlight because we're gonna have more traffic and dust getting on these units. I'm just thinking outside the box.
How much would repair for some drunk driver hitting?
I was thinking that too.
To go flying through the
Yeah.
solar field too.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could get that in restitution, in a court case, that, depending on how much that, it's gonna be very expensive, and I doubt,
I mean, it's
probably-
insured.
It probably
so-
wouldn't happen, but I just,
But it's insured too.
yeah.
Happens to somebody.
It would be an improvement to the property,
It
for
would.
sure. It would be more than the city that would stand to gain from having this project done. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's who we're doing it for.
Mhm. Is it even possible to have a 15-pager done in 2 weeks?
But, it is.
The 15 pages not due till July, right?
Nope, that's
No.
the one that's due April 19th.
That's why he said that it's like a weeder.
Gotcha.
Most of them would not be that intense.
It is rural development, So, I mean, I think that, and it's federal in nature. I think it's easy to get letters of support, especially from, I think from the schools.
Well, we're not going towards more coal as a country, we're going more towards renewables, and this is a renewable. $5,000 for a 15-page letter of intent. Let's see what happens. Take the shot. It's my opinion.
I agree.
And you're right, Billy, we're probably gonna have somebody that ends up in court one time after driving through it, after having one
I wouldn't be
too many
surprised.
Miller
I
Lights.
guess I'd just wait for the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, we
Um,
could have cement barrier around it.
Yeah,
A fence and some goats in there too.
right, make
Take
sure,
care of the
yeah,
grass so
what,
there's no mowing.
the boring has to be big enough for the goats to be able to go through from
There you
section
go.
to section. Yeah, and also to be fail safes in it, so if, drunk driver gets in there, we can shut it down, so our people can get in there and get the guy out without getting shocked and running in and out of there, so. I think all those things are possible, but I think that we're going, as a nation, we're going more towards renewables. There's a lot of space like this across our great country that has nothing in it right now, so we're probably on the leading edge of this. So why not do it? What a great thing to see as you come up over the bypass or right around hey, what's Napoleon known for? Oh, look at that, they got solar panels. How cool is that? So that's where I am with it.
We'll see. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. If not, we will need a motion to submit the application.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
It was, the letter of intent was first. The application comes after.
Okay.
But
Letter
yeah.
of intent. I'll make a motion to write the letter of intent.
And I'll second. All right, Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
Item K6, discussion or action, transfer of liquor permit from Miami Valley Pizza LLC to SFRX Holding LLC, DBA Pizza Hut of Ohio, located at 2240 North Scott Street. Joel?
I don't really have anything to add to this. This is the Pizza Hut.
Yep,
Are they just selling to new
Yeah.
owners?
yeah,
They got new owners.
yeah.
Are they even open?
There was cars there this weekend.
Once in a while.
Once in a while.
I've made a couple attempts over the last month, and
No
they've
go.
been closed.
I got some Friday.
Oh,
So,
Has there been any issue with drunkenness coming out of the Pizza Hut currently, chief? Thank you.
So silence is acceptance on this one. You don't have to make a motion or anything.
And we also realize that as our engineers told us many times, there's no such thing as North Scott Street, it's just Scott Street. So we'll eliminate that N. So,
If there's no other discussion or questions, we will move on.
some habits are hard to break.
Moving on to item K7, discussion or action, accept Ohio law enforcement body armor grant in the amount of $2,950.48. Chief?
This is an annual grant that we apply for. It's one of two grants. One's through the federal government, and this one's through the state of Ohio. So this just helps offset the cost of the vest. It's not 100%, it's I think roughly 50/50, roughly.
Thank you.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave.
Yep.
Molly.
Yes.
Item K8, discussion or action, accept donation from Napoleon Family Vision of indoor-outdoor carpeting at Oakwood Park batting cages in the amount of $2,000. Joel?
Thank you. I have the list of the donations now, and these are the items that we discussed at the budget adjustment, so I don't have anything to add to these, unless anybody has questions.
Do we have a motion to accept?
Can we do this in one motion, cover the three items in one motion?
Let's do it separate.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do we have a motion to accept the $2,000 donation?
I'll
So
make that
moved.
motion. Or
Thank
second,
you.
whatever.
Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yep.
Molly.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Napoleon Family Vision. Really appreciate that. Item K9, discussion or action, accept donation from LT Appraisal of pitching screens for Oakwood Park ball fields for the amount of $350. Do we have a motion to accept?
I'll motion to accept that.
Second.
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Dr. Dave.
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
Thank you, LT Appraisal. Item K10, discussion or action, accept donation from Dennis Winter of bench swings for Ritter Park adjacent to boat launch ramp area in the amount of $1,000. Do we have a motion to accept?
Motion?
Second.
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Dr. Dave.
Yes.
Molly.
Yes.
All right. Moving on to item L, we'll go around the table. Joel, I'll let you get us started.
All right. The only thing I have is I put something in your file, Council President Pro Tem. The Henry County Hospital Foundation Golf Outing is their first annual, is July 15th. It's an event coming up, so I don't know if anybody knew about that or not. Other than that, I have nothing. Thanks.
Billy?
Can I get an executive session for pending litigation, please? And can I get both chiefs in there, please?
Anything else?
That's it.
Dr. Cordes?
Nothing.
Ms. Reyes?
Are we gonna have the street sweeper working pretty soon?
Was out
If
today.
we can have the staff to operate it. Had it out, I believe, once so far, but right now we have several people out, so we're trying to get it out as much as we can. We still have bodies.
I have nothing else.
Mr. Bear?
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Mayor?
In the packet was the letter for State Representative Hoops and State Senator McCulley in opposition to the House Senate bill. What is it?
288.
Thank you very much. I think Roxanne has copies of it up here, so if we want to sign that before you leave, we'll make sure we get that down to the appropriate people. I saw we're advertising for the application for the open position for clerk of council. Do we know where that, have we received any applications yet? Do you know?
I haven't checked.
Okay.
I think it's, when does it?
When I talked to Laney,
Okay.
Okay,
they received one.
but it's still open for a little while yet, right? It's not closing anytime soon,
I
right?
believe, yeah, it's not closed yet, possibly this Friday.
That's usually, we get the crescendos usually at the end of it, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. The other thing that we may or may not realize is today is Joel's birthday, so let's sing happy birthday.
You don't have to, you just eat some of the cupcakes that are up there that Amanda and the kids made.
All right, cool.
What's that? Those are Fruity Pebbles, yeah, those are Fruity Pebble cupcakes.
There's a big one in the middle that says, sing happy birthday to Joel.
Yeah.
It's a real big cupcake. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Joel. Happy birthday to you. And I'm glad we're a council, not a choir. We gotta work pretty quick. Yeah, that was rough. And that's all I had, thank you. Actually, one last thing. Sometimes I question the academic ability of a council president, but tonight, when 6 things that get, a lot of words get passed, and he's in Florida and we're not, he's smarter than I think, so good job tonight, though, Ross, appreciate it, thank you.
Nothing for me. Lori?
I have nothing.
Ms. Nepler?
Yes, I just wanted to say thanks to Officer Strickland. He's been visiting the first graders. And I have one impressed first grader. She talks about it every day he goes in, so he does a great job throughout the whole elementary school. It's appreciated.
Kevin?
I cannot take away from this grand day, but today is another holiday. It is National Hug and Newsperson Day.
Oh.
And in lieu of a hug, I'd just like to give a huge shout out to the people that keep us informed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We gonna sing to him too?
Yeah, I don't.
No, we don't want him reporting on that.
That's all I have.
Thank you. I will take a motion to go into executive session for pending litigation,
So
please.
moved. Second.
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Can I?
All right. May I have a motion to come out of executive session for pending litigation, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Rox, please call the roll.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Thank you. No action taken there. Item N, approve payment of bills. In the absence of any objections or corrections, the payment of bills shall stand approved. Hearing none, they'll stand approved. Motion for adjournment, please.
I'll motion.
Second.
Rox, please call the roll.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.